I could feel my heart pounding in my chest as I pushed open the door to the cozy little cafe on Maple Street. The scent of freshly brewed coffee mixed with the sweet aroma of pastries hit me, but it did nothing to calm my nerves. I had come here for a quick break from work, hoping to clear my head after a chaotic morning at the nonprofit. Instead, I stumbled upon something that would shatter my world. "James, you can't keep doing this," a woman's voice hissed, her tone sharp and filled with frustration. I froze, my hand still on the door handle. That voice, I knew it. It belonged to Samantha, the real estate agent who had sold us our house. My eyes darted to the corner of the cafe where I saw them. James, my husband, was sitting across from Sam. His face was a mask of guilt and anger. "Sam, lower your voice," James muttered, glancing around nervously. His eyes widened when he saw me standing there, but he quickly looked away, pretending not to notice. I felt like I had been punched in the gut, the air knocked out of me. I wanted to scream, to confront them right then and there, but my feet were rooted to the spot. Instead, I watched, my mind racing. "Don't tell me to lower my voice," Sam snapped, leaning closer to James. "You promised me you'd leave her. You said you were done." James's face reddened, and he clenched his fists on the table. "I need more time. It's not that simple." "Not that simple?" Sam's voice rose, drawing the attention of nearby patrons. "You've had months, James. I'm not going to be your dirty little secret forever." My vision blurred with tears, but I forced myself to stay focused. I took a deep breath and stepped forward, my heels clicking on the tiled floor. The sound seemed to echo through the cafe, causing heads to turn. "James," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "What's going on here?" Both James and Sam looked up, their faces pale. James opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. Sam's eyes darted between us, her expression a mix of shock and defiance. "Liz, James started, but I held up my hand, cutting him off. "Save it," I said, my voice cold. I heard everything. The cafe was eerily silent as I turned on my heel and walked out, my mind a whirlwind of emotions. Betrayal, anger, and a burning desire for revenge swirled within me. My life, my marriage, had been a lie, and I was determined to make them both pay for it. As I stepped out into the crisp autumn air, I knew I couldn't go back to work. Not now. I needed to clear my head, to figure out my next move. I pulled out my phone and dialed Susan's number. "Hey, Liz," Susan answered cheerfully. "What's up?" "Susan, I need to see you," I said, my voice trembling. "It's urgent." "Of course," she replied, her tone shifting to concern. "Where are you?" "The cafe on Maple Street," I said. "Can you meet me here?" "I'll be there in 10, Susan promised before hanging up. I sank onto a nearby bench, my mind replaying the confrontation over and over. How had I missed the signs? The late-night tutoring sessions, the sudden distant behavior. It all made sense now. James had been lying to me, and Sam had been complicit in it. 10 minutes later, Susan arrived, her face etched with worry. She sat down beside me, placing a comforting hand on my shoulder. "Liz, what happened?" she asked gently. I took a deep breath and recounted the scene I had witnessed, my voice cracking with emotion. Susan listened intently, her eyes narrowing with anger as I spoke. "That bastard," she muttered when I finished. "How could he do this to you?" "I don't know," I whispered, tears streaming down my face. "But I can't let him get away with it." Susan nodded, her expression fierce. "You're right. We'll figure this out together. You're not alone in this, Liz." As I looked into my best friend's determined eyes, I felt a glimmer of hope. I wasn't alone, and with Susan by my side, I knew I had the strength to face whatever came next. The seeds of revenge had been planted, and I was ready to see them grow. As I sat on the bench with Susan, my thoughts drifted back to the early days with James. College had been a whirlwind of late-night study sessions, spontaneous road trips, and endless laughter. We met in a literature class, and our shared love for books had brought us together. James was charming with his easy smile and quick wit, and I was drawn to his passion for teaching. Remember when we first met? I asked Susan, my voice tinged with nostalgia. She smiled, nodding. You two were inseparable, always talking about your future plans. I closed my eyes, recalling those moments. James and I had faced our share of ups and downs, but we always found our way back to each other. Or so I had thought. The sound of children playing in the park nearby brought me back to the present. I looked at Susan, determination settling in my chest. I need to know how long this has been going on, I said. I need answers. Susan nodded. We'll get them. But first, you need to take care of yourself. Let's go back to your place, and we'll figure out our next steps. We stood up and made our way to my car. The drive home was quiet, each of us lost in our thoughts. When we arrived, I felt a wave of exhaustion wash over me. The events of the day had taken their toll. Why don't you rest for a bit? Susan suggested. I'll make us some tea. I nodded, grateful for her presence. I headed to the bedroom, my mind still racing. As I lay on the bed, memories of our wedding day flooded my thoughts. The way James had looked at me, his eyes filled with love and promise. How had we gone from that to this? I must have dozed off because the next thing I knew, Susan was gently shaking me awake. Liz, I found something, she said, her voice urgent. I sat up, rubbing my eyes. What is it? She handed me James's laptop, the screen displaying his email inbox. I remembered you saying he never logged out of his email. I found messages between him and Sam. My heart pounded as I scrolled through the emails. There were dozens of them, each one more incriminating than the last. Plans for secret rendezvous, declarations of love, and promises to leave me. It was all there in black and white. I can't believe this, I whispered, my hands trembling. Susan sat beside me, her expression fierce. You deserve better than this, Liz. We need to confront him. I nodded, a newfound resolve taking hold. You're right. I need to face him head-on. Just then the front door creaked open and James walked in, looking surprised to see Susan and me together. Liz, Susan, he said, his voice wary. What's going on? I stood up, holding the laptop. James, we need to talk. His eyes darted to the screen, and I saw the panic set in. Liz, I can explain. Save it, I interrupted, my voice steady. How long has this been going on? James sighed, running a hand through his hair. A few months. I felt a surge of anger. A few months? And you thought you could just lie to me, betray me like this? It wasn't supposed to happen, he said, his voice pleading. I never meant to hurt you. But you did, I snapped. And now you need to face the consequences. James looked desperate, his eyes darting to Susan for support, but she remained silent, her expression cold. I want you to pack your things and leave, I said, my voice firm. You can stay with your parents until we figure out the next steps. James's face fell, but he nodded, knowing there was no point in arguing. He headed to the bedroom to pack, leaving Susan and me alone. You did the right thing, Susan said, squeezing my hand. I nodded, feeling a mix of relief and sorrow. I know, but it still hurts. Susan hugged me, her embrace warm and comforting. We'll get through this together. As James emerged with a suitcase, I felt a pang of sadness. This wasn't how I had envisioned our life together. But now, I had to focus on moving forward. James paused at the door, his eyes filled with regret. I'm sorry, Liz. I didn't respond, watching as he walked out of the door. The moment he left, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. The road ahead would be tough, but with Susan by my side, I knew I could face whatever came next. And I was determined to come out stronger on the other side. The days following James's departure were a blur of emotions. I threw myself into work at the nonprofit, hoping the chaos would distract me from the turmoil in my personal life. But every quiet moment brought the painful memories rushing back. How are you holding up? Susan asked one evening as we sat in my living room sipping tea. I'm managing, I replied, though my voice lacked conviction. It's just, everything reminds me of him. Susan nodded sympathetically. It's going to take time, Liz. But you're strong. You'll get through this. I appreciated her words, but the ache in my heart felt like a constant reminder of my shattered life. As much as I tried to focus on moving forward, the past kept pulling me back. One evening, as I was sorting through some old photos, my phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Laura, James's mother. "Hi Liz, can we talk? It's important." My stomach churned. I hadn't spoken to Paul and Laura since James left. They were good people, and I had always felt welcomed by them. But now, everything was complicated. I texted back, "Sure, I'll come over tomorrow." The next day, I drove to their house, my nerves on edge. When I arrived, Laura greeted me with a warm hug, her eyes filled with concern. "Come in, dear," she said, ushering me inside. Paul was sitting in the living room, his expression serious. "Liz, we're so sorry for everything," he began. "We had no idea James was involved with someone else." I nodded, tears welling up in my eyes. "Thank you. It's been difficult." Laura took my hand, her grip firm. "We want you to know that we're here for you. You're like a daughter to us, and we support you." Their words were a balm to my wounded heart. "Thank you," I whispered. "That means a lot." As we talked, I couldn't help but notice the tension in the room. Something was off. "Is there something else?" I asked, sensing their hesitation. Paul exchanged a glance with Laura before speaking. "Liz, we found something. In James's old room." My heart skipped a beat. "What is it?" Laura handed me a small box, her expression pained. "We didn't know if we should show you, but you deserve to know." I opened the box, revealing a collection of letters and small gifts. Each one was addressed to Sam. My hands trembled as I read through the letters, each one a testament to James's betrayal. "I can't believe this," I said, my voice breaking. "He kept all of this here?" Paul nodded, his expression grim. "We thought you should see it. We didn't want to hide anything from you." I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "Thank you for showing me. I need to figure out what to do next." As I drove home, my mind raced with thoughts of revenge. James had not only betrayed me, but had also deceived his own parents. The anger that simmered within me threatened to boil over. That evening, Susan came over, and I showed her the letters and gifts. Her eyes widened with fury as she read through them. "That scumbag," she muttered. "We need to do something, Liz. He can't get away with this." I nodded, my resolve hardening. "You're right, but we need to be smart about it." Susan's eyes gleamed with determination. "Let's start by gathering evidence. We need to expose him for who he really is." Over the next few days, we meticulously collected every piece of evidence we could find. Emails, text messages, photos, anything that proved James's infidelity. The more we uncovered, the more my anger fueled my determination. One evening, as Susan and I were going through the last batch of emails, my phone buzzed with a new message. It was from an unknown number. "Meet me at the park tomorrow at noon. I have information about James." I showed the message to Susan, my curiosity piqued. "Who do you think it is?" Susan frowned. "It could be anyone, but we need to be careful." The next day, I arrived at the park, my heart pounding with anticipation. I scanned the area, looking for any sign of the mysterious sender. A figure emerged from behind a tree, and my breath caught in my throat. It was Sam. "Liz," she said, her voice low. "We need to talk." My mind raced with questions, but I forced myself to stay calm. "What do you want, Sam?" She looked around nervously before speaking. "I know you hate me, and you have every right to. But there's something you need to know about James. Something that changes everything." My pulse quickened. "What is it?" Sam took a deep breath, her eyes filled with a mix of fear and determination. "James isn't who you think he is. He's been hiding something from both of us. And if you want to know the truth, you'll need to trust me." As I stared into her eyes, a sense of foreboding settled over me. Whatever Sam had to reveal, it was bound to escalate the conflict to a whole new level. I stared at Sam, my mind racing. Trust her? After everything she'd done? But the look in her eyes told me she was serious. Whatever she had to say, it was important. "Fine," I said, crossing my arms. Talk. Sam glanced around nervously before speaking. James has been hiding money. A lot of money. And not just from you, from everyone. My heart skipped a beat. What do you mean? He's been embezzling funds from the school, she whispered. He used his position to siphon money into a secret account. I found out by accident, and he swore me to secrecy. But I can't keep quiet anymore. It's wrong. I felt like the ground had been pulled out from under me. Embezzling? This was bigger than I had imagined. James wasn't just unfaithful. He was a criminal. Why are you telling me this now? I demanded, my voice shaking with anger. Because you deserve to know the truth, Sam replied, her eyes pleading. And because I'm scared. If this comes out, it could ruin both of us. But I can't live with the guilt anymore. I took a deep breath, trying to process the information. Do you have proof? Sam nodded, pulling a folder from her bag. I've been gathering evidence. Bank statements, transaction records. It's all here. I took the folder, my hands trembling. As I flipped through the documents, the reality of the situation sank in. James had betrayed me on every possible level. And now I had the proof. Thank you, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I need to think about what to do next. Sam nodded, relief washing over her face. I understand. Just be careful, Liz. James isn't the man you think he is. As she walked away, I felt a mix of emotions. Anger, betrayal, fear. But mostly, I felt a burning determination. James had taken everything from me, and now it was time to fight back. I called Susan as soon as I got home. You won't believe what I just found out, I said, my voice urgent. What is it? She asked, concern evident in her tone. James has been embezzling money from the school, I explained, recounting my conversation with Sam. I have the proof. Susan was silent for a moment. Liz, this is huge. We need to act fast. I know, I replied, but I need to figure out how to handle this. If we go to the authorities, it could get messy, and I don't want to put his parents through more pain. We'll figure it out together, Susan said, her voice reassuring. But you need to be careful. James might try to cover his tracks if he finds out we know. That night, I barely slept. My mind was a whirlwind of thoughts and plans. By morning, I had made a decision. I needed to confront James one last time, but this time, I would be prepared. I called him, my voice steady. James, we need to talk. Can you come over? He hesitated. Liz, I don't think that's a good idea. It's important, I insisted. Please. There was a long pause before he finally agreed. I'll be there in an hour. As I waited, I went over my plan. Susan would be there with me, and I had the folder of evidence ready. This confrontation would be different. This time, I had the upper hand. When James arrived, he looked wary. What's this about, Liz? I took a deep breath, my heart pounding. I know everything, James. About the affair, the embezzlement, all of it. His face went pale. What are you talking about? I handed him the folder. Sam told me everything. And I have proof. James flipped through the documents, his hands shaking. This isn't what it looks like, he stammered. It's exactly what it looks like. I shot back. You betrayed me. You betrayed your students. And now you need to face the consequences. Susan stepped forward, her expression fierce. We're going to the authorities, James. You can either come clean, or we'll do it for you. James's eyes darted between us, panic setting in. Please, Liz. We can work this out. Just give me a chance. I shook my head, my resolve unwavering. No more chances, James. You made your choices, and now you have to live with them. As he stood there, defeated, I felt a sense of closure. This was the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. I had been through hell, but I had come out stronger. And now it was time to reclaim my life. As James left, I turned to Susan, my heart lighter than it had been in weeks. Thank you for being here, I said, hugging her tightly. Always, she replied, her voice filled with warmth. You're not alone, Liz. We'll get through this together. With Susan by my side, I knew I could face whatever came next. The road ahead would be challenging, but I was ready. And I was determined to come out on top. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of urgency. The confrontation with James had been cathartic, but now I needed to take action. I called Susan and asked her to meet me at Paul and Laura's house. It was time to reveal everything. When we arrived, Laura greeted us with a warm smile, though her eyes were tinged with worry. "Liz, Susan, come in. What's going on?" I took a deep breath. "Laura, Paul, we need to talk. It's about James." Paul looked up from his newspaper, his expression serious. "What is it, Liz?" I handed them the folder of evidence Sam had given me. "James has been embezzling money from the school. We have proof." Laura gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Paul's face turned pale as he flipped through the documents. "This can't be true," he muttered. "James would never." "It's all there," I said, my voice steady. "He's been lying to all of us." Laura's eyes filled with tears. "How could he do this? To his students, to us, to you?" "I don't know," I replied, my heart aching for them. "But we need to act fast. We have to go to the authorities." Paul nodded, his jaw set with determination. "You're right. This needs to be handled properly." As we discussed our next steps, I felt a mix of relief and sorrow. This was the right thing to do, but it was tearing apart the people I cared about. Just then, my phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. I hesitated before answering. "Hello, Liz, it's Sam," she said, her voice urgent. "You need to come to my office. Now." "What's going on?" I asked, my pulse quickening. "I found something else," she replied. "Something that changes everything." I glanced at Susan and the Palmers. "I need to go. Sam says she found something important." Susan nodded. "We'll handle things here. Go see what she has." I drove to Sam's office, my mind racing with possibilities. When I arrived, she ushered me into a private room, her face pale. "What is it?" I asked, my heart pounding. She handed me a flash drive. "I found this on James's computer. It's a video." I plugged the drive into her laptop, my hands trembling. The screen flickered to life, showing a grainy video of James in his classroom. He was talking to a student, a young girl who looked distressed. "I can help you," James said, his voice calm. "But you need to keep this between us." My blood ran cold as I realized what was happening. James was manipulating his students, using his position to control them. This wasn't just embezzlement, it was exploitation. "This is worse than I thought," I whispered, my stomach churning. "We need to take this to the police." Sam nodded, her eyes filled with guilt. "I'm so sorry, Liz. I had no idea it was this bad." I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "We need to act fast. Can you come with me to the police station?" "Of course," she replied, her voice firm. "I'll do whatever it takes to make this right." As we drove to the police station, my mind raced with thoughts of the students James had manipulated. They deserved justice, and I was determined to see it through. At the station, we met with Detective Harris, a stern-looking woman with sharp eyes. I handed her the flash drive and explained everything, from the embezzlement to the video. "This is serious," she said, her expression grave. "We'll need to investigate further, but this evidence is damning. Thank you for bringing it to us." As we left the station, I felt a mix of relief and dread. The wheels were in motion, but the road ahead would be long and difficult. Back at home, I met with Susan, Paul, and Laura to update them on the situation. Their faces were etched with worry, but they stood by me, offering their support. "We'll get through this together," Susan said, her voice filled with determination. That night, as I lay in bed, I felt a strange sense of calm. The truth was out, and justice was within reach. But I knew the battle was far from over. I had to stay strong, not just for myself, but for everyone affected by James's actions. The next morning, I woke up with a renewed sense of purpose. It was time to take the next step. I called a meeting at the nonprofit, gathering my colleagues to explain the situation. "We need to support the students," I said, my voice steady. We need to offer them resources and a safe space to come forward. As my colleagues nodded in agreement, I felt a sense of solidarity. We were in this together, and we would see it through. The days that followed were a whirlwind of meetings, interviews, and legal proceedings. But through it all, I felt a sense of empowerment. I was no longer a victim. I was a fighter, and I was determined to see justice served. As I stood outside the courthouse, watching James being led away in handcuffs, I felt a sense of closure. This was the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. I had faced my worst fears and come out stronger. And now, I was ready to embrace whatever came next. I arrived home earlier than expected from my work trip, the house eerily quiet. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the living room. As I set my bags down, I noticed something unusual, a soft glow emanating from the dining room. My heart pounded as I moved closer, the scent of candles and a faint hint of perfume filling the air. I pushed open the door to the dining room, and my breath caught in my throat. The table was set for two, adorned with a bouquet of roses and a bottle of wine. Soft music played in the background, and there, standing by the table, was James. And beside him, Sam. "What is this?" I demanded, my voice trembling with anger. James and Sam turned to face me, their expressions a mix of shock and guilt. "Liz, I can explain," James started, but I cut him off. "Explain? You think you can explain this?" I gestured to the romantic setup, my hands shaking. "In my house." Sam stepped forward, her eyes filled with regret. "Liz, I'm sorry. I didn't know you'd be home early." "This isn't about you, Sam," I snapped. "This is about him. My husband. The man who's been lying to me, cheating on me, and now, apparently, bringing his mistress into our home." James looked desperate, his eyes pleading. "Liz, please. Let's talk about this." "There's nothing to talk about," I said, my voice cold. "You've made your choices, James. And now you have to live with the consequences." As the tension in the room thickened, I felt a surge of empowerment. This was my moment, my chance to take control of the situation. I pulled out my phone and dialed Paul and Laura's number. "Liz, what's going on?" Laura answered, her voice filled with concern. "Laura, I need you and Paul to come over." "Now," I said, my voice steady. "It's about James." Within minutes, Paul and Laura arrived, their faces etched with worry. When they saw the scene before them, their expressions turned to shock and disbelief. "James, what is this?" Paul demanded, his voice trembling with anger. James looked defeated, his shoulders slumped. "Dad, I can explain." "No, you can't," I interrupted. "James has been lying to all of us. He's been embezzling money from the school, manipulating his students, and now this." Laura's eyes filled with tears as she turned to James. "How could you do this? How could you betray us like this?" James looked at the ground, unable to meet her gaze. "I'm sorry," he muttered, but the words felt hollow. Paul stepped forward, his face flushed with anger. "You're no longer welcome here, James. You've hurt too many people, and you need to face the consequences of your actions." As James stood there, defeated, I felt a sense of closure. This was the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. I had taken control of the situation, and now it was time to move forward. But just as I thought things couldn't get worse, my phone buzzed with a new message. It was from Detective Harris. "Liz, we need you to come to the station. There's been a development." My heart sank as I read the message. "What now?" I showed the message to Susan, who had been quietly standing by my side. "We need to go," she said, her voice filled with urgency. "Let's find out what's going on." As we drove to the police station, my mind raced with possibilities. What could have happened? When we arrived, Detective Harris met us with a grave expression. "Liz, we've uncovered more evidence," she said, her voice serious. "It appears James was involved in more than just embezzlement. There are indications of fraud and identity theft as well." My heart pounded in my chest. This was bigger than I had imagined. "What does this mean?" I asked, my voice trembling. "It means the stakes are higher," Detective Harris replied. But it also means we have a stronger case against him. As the reality of the situation sank in, I felt a mix of fear and determination. This was the most significant crisis yet, but I was ready to face it head-on. With Susan by my side and the support of Paul and Laura, I knew I could see this through. As we left the station, I felt a sense of resolve. This was my fight, and I was determined to win. The road ahead would be challenging, but I was ready to face whatever came next. Everything was at stake, but I was prepared to do whatever it took to see justice served. As we drove home, I made a crucial decision. It was time to expose James's betrayal to the world. The truth needed to come out, and I was ready to take that step. With my friends and family by my side, I knew we could face whatever challenges lay ahead. This was my moment, and I was determined to seize it. The next morning, I woke with a sense of purpose. Today was the day everything would change. I had made the decision to expose James's betrayal publicly, and there was no turning back. I called Susan and asked her to meet me at the community center, where we often held our nonprofit events. It was the perfect place to make my stand. When Susan arrived, she looked at me with a mix of concern and determination. "Are you sure about this, Liz?" I nodded, my resolve unwavering. "It's time, Susan. People need to know the truth." We spent the morning setting up the community center, arranging chairs and preparing the presentation. I had invited key members of the community, including parents from James's school, colleagues from my nonprofit, and even local media. The evidence was ready, and so was I. As people began to arrive, I felt a mix of anxiety and anticipation. This was it. Everything was at stake, but I knew I had to see it through. Susan stood by my side, her presence a constant source of strength. When the room was full, I stepped up to the podium, my heart pounding. "Thank you all for coming," I began, my voice steady. "I have something important to share with you today. It's about my husband, James Palmer." A murmur of surprise rippled through the crowd. I took a deep breath and continued. "James has been living a double life. He's been unfaithful, yes, but it's more than that. He's been embezzling money from the school, manipulating his students, and committing fraud." Gasps of shock filled the room as I presented the evidence. The bank statements, the emails, the video, all laid bare for everyone to see. As I spoke, I saw the faces of parents who had trusted James with their children's education, colleagues who had respected him, and friends who had believed in him. The betrayal ran deep. Just as I finished, the doors burst open, and James stormed in, his face flushed with anger. "What are you doing, Liz?" he shouted, his voice echoing through the room. I stood my ground, my voice unwavering. "I'm telling the truth, James. It's time for everyone to know who you really are." He looked around, desperation in his eyes. "You can't do this. You're ruining my life." "No, James," I replied, my voice cold. "You ruined your own life. I'm just exposing the truth." At that moment, Paul and Laura entered the room, their faces etched with sorrow. They walked up to the podium, standing beside me. "James," Paul said, his voice trembling with emotion. "We've supported you all your life, but this is unforgivable. You've betrayed us all." Laura's eyes filled with tears as she looked at her son. "We love you, James, but we can't stand by and let you hurt more people. We're cutting ties with you until you face the consequences of your actions." James's face crumpled with despair. "Mom, Dad, please." But they turned away, their decision final. The room was silent, the weight of the moment pressing down on everyone. As James stood there, defeated, I felt a sense of closure. This was the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. I had taken control of the situation, and now it was time to move forward. But just as I thought things couldn't get worse, my phone buzzed with a new message. It was from Detective Harris. "Liz, we need you to come to the station. There's been a development." My heart sank as I read the message. "What now?" I showed the message to Susan, who had been quietly standing by my side. "We need to go," she said, her voice filled with urgency. "Let's find out what's going on." As we drove to the police station, my mind raced with possibilities. What could have happened? When we arrived, Detective Harris met us with a grave expression. "Liz, we've uncovered more evidence," she said, her voice serious. "It appears James was involved in more than just embezzlement. There are indications of fraud and identity theft as well." My heart pounded in my chest. This was bigger than I had imagined. "What does this mean?" I asked, my voice trembling. "It means the stakes are higher," Detective Harris replied. "But it also means we have a stronger case against him." As the reality of the situation sank in, I felt a mix of fear and determination. This was the most significant crisis yet, but I was ready to face it head-on. With Susan by my side and the support of Paul and Laura, I knew I could see this through. As we left the station, I felt a sense of resolve. This was my fight, and I was determined to win. The road ahead would be challenging, but I was ready to face whatever came next. Everything was at stake, but I was prepared to do whatever it took to see justice served. As we drove home, I made a crucial decision. It was time to expose James's betrayal to the world. The truth needed to come out, and I was ready to take that step. With my friends and family by my side, I knew we could face whatever challenges lay ahead. This was my moment, and I was determined to seize it. I stood at the courthouse steps, the crisp morning air biting at my skin. The culmination of months of turmoil, betrayal, and investigation had led to this moment. James was about to face the full extent of his actions, and I was here to witness it. Susan stood beside me, her presence a steadying force. As we walked inside, the tension was palpable. Reporters and curious onlookers filled the halls, their whispers a constant hum. The courtroom was packed, and I felt every eye on me as I took my seat. Paul and Laura were already there, their faces etched with a mixture of sorrow and resolve. James entered the courtroom, flanked by his lawyer. He looked gaunt, his eyes hollow. The confident, charming man I once knew was gone, replaced by someone I barely recognized. He glanced at me briefly, but I held his gaze unflinching. The trial began, and the prosecution laid out the damning evidence: the embezzlement, the fraud, the manipulation of students. Each revelation felt like another nail in the coffin of our shared past. I listened intently, my emotions a whirlwind of anger, sadness, and a strange sense of relief. When it was my turn to testify, I took a deep breath and walked to the stand. The courtroom fell silent as I recounted the events that had led us here. I spoke of the affair, the hidden gifts, the confrontation, and the discovery of James's criminal activities. I held nothing back, my voice steady and unwavering. As I finished, I looked directly at James. "You betrayed me, our marriage, and the trust of so many people. But today, I stand here not as a victim, but as someone who has found her strength. You will face the consequences of your actions, and I will move forward with my life." James's lawyer tried to mitigate the damage, but the evidence was overwhelming. The jury deliberated for what felt like an eternity, but when they returned, the verdict was clear: guilty on all counts. James was led away in handcuffs, his fate sealed. As the courtroom emptied, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. It was over. The battle had been long and arduous, but justice had been served. Susan hugged me tightly, her eyes filled with pride. "You did it, Liz. You stood up for yourself and for everyone James hurt." Paul and Laura approached, their expressions a mix of sadness and gratitude. "Thank you, Liz," Paul said, his voice thick with emotion. "We're so sorry for everything you've been through, but we're proud of your strength." Laura nodded, tears streaming down her face. "You've shown us what true resilience looks like. We're here for you, always." With their support, I knew I could face whatever came next. The journey had been painful, but it had also been transformative. I had found my voice, my strength, and a renewed sense of purpose. In the weeks that followed, the fallout from the trial rippled through our community. Sam faced her own consequences, losing her job and social standing. But she also began to rebuild, seeking redemption in her own way. We had an unspoken understanding. Our paths had crossed in the most painful of ways, but we were both determined to move forward. As for me, I threw myself into my work at the nonprofit, finding solace in helping others. The support from my friends, colleagues, and community was overwhelming. They rallied around me, offering encouragement and love. One evening, as I sat on my porch watching the sunset, Susan joined me, a bottle of wine in hand. "To new beginnings," she said, pouring us each a glass. "To new beginnings," I echoed, clinking my glass with hers. We sat in comfortable silence, the weight of the past lifting with each passing moment. I had faced the darkest parts of my life and emerged stronger. The future was uncertain, but I was ready to embrace it with open arms. As the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, I felt a profound sense of peace. My journey had been one of betrayal and heartache, but it had also been one of resilience and transformation. I had reclaimed my life, and I was determined to live it on my own terms. With Susan by my side and the support of those who loved me, I knew I could face whatever challenges lay ahead. The road had been long and difficult, but it had led me to a place of strength and empowerment. And for that, I was grateful. As I looked out at the horizon, I felt a sense of hope and anticipation. My story was far from over, but I was ready for whatever came next. This was my new beginning, and I was determined to make the most of it.